So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. Welcome to the June session of the HR Tech Couch Club, where we basically get together once a month and blab about all things HR technology, what is going on in the world of technology, and in current news, what the heck is AI doing and how many marketing and brand labels it is being currently slapped on. So my name is Lydia Wu. If this is the first time you're hearing from me, I am the founder and creator behind Whoops Did I Think That Out Loud, aka your Real Talk BFF, behind all things happening in the world of HR and technology. And today I have with me our usual hosts, Martha and Mercedes. Welcome, guys. And I would love to introduce everyone here to Malika as well as Barb. So today we are getting into the conversation of what the heck is happening in the world of HR technology, tech adoption, what HR leaders are actually looking for, what vendors or solution providers are designing for, where are the matches, where are the gaps, and all of that fun stuff. So if you are joining us on LinkedIn Live right now, please do me a favor and tech check me because I literally cannot see the front end of this whole stream, and send in the comments below in terms of where are you joining us from, what do you want to get out of it, and let's see, a creative one would be the misuse of AI that you have come across over the last couple weeks or months, maybe. And with that said, Barb and Malika, I'm going to turn the mic on you guys. Can you please introduce yourselves to our audience, and then we'll go from there.
You want to go first, Barb, or you want me to go?
Sure. I'll go. Barb Bidan. I was most recently the Chief People Experience Officer at Crunchyroll, but I've spent a bunch of time in a similar seat in some really fun, or I think fun, consumer-facing brands. But more importantly to this conversation, I've also spent the last 8 months since being on a break from Crunchyroll doing lots of fun stuff in life, including spending a ton of time with some of the founders that I advise and work with, and really diving in on AI tools in a way that I just didn't have the same level of time to do when I was working. So I'm super excited for the conversation today. I'm Canadian and American, which is going to not be a differentiator on this call, and I live in Dallas right now.
Yes, correct, because 3/5 of us are Canadian and American. Which is really fun and rarely happens. So I am Malika Jacobs. I am based out of Columbus, Ohio. As Lydia knows and Barb knows more recently, I've been working on a company called Array for about 2.5 years in the HR tech operations space. Got here totally by accident. I am not an HR practitioner myself, but during COVID, I had to pivot my previous business and found myself in the role of an HR tech vendor, a services vendor, and had to navigate that as a person selling a completely new service to a completely new buyer and audience. So that is the angle that I bring to this conversation, is just how that experience has influenced how we've built Array and how we think about the user that we're building for. And been really fortunate to have folks like Lydia and Barb supporting us. And I'm really excited for the conversation with Martha and Mercedes too. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. So we do have in the audience a love for Crunchyroll, as I can hear. Folks, if you're joining us on LinkedIn Live, to prove to you that this is an actual live event and not pre-recorded, feel free to drop any questions, comments, or thoughts as you join us in the conversation in that comment box below, and we will get to them accordingly. Speaking of Crunchyroll, so before, when we were in the backstage, we were actually talking about the weird brand obsessions people have, how Mercedes' son now thinks she's the coolest mom in the world because we have Barb on the phone with us.
I know, which I still have deep love for Crunchyroll too, as a fan, like all the folks that are on the call with us today.
It's a thing. Kyle knows, he's commenting. For those of you that cannot see, Kyle's also a fan. Thank you for making me cool, Barb. That's new for me.
Do it.
Amazing. So, Malika, this question is for you. And this is my favorite question I will ask all founders, and I highly encourage everyone to ask all technology founders. What sucked enough for you to be like, yes, HR tech, this is exactly what I'm going to build my next business in, and this is a field that I'm going to get into?
That's a great question because I actually came from board games, which I have to say is also like a captivating kind of obsessive space for people. And now a very few of us want to talk about HR tech, so this might be the group right here. Yeah, how did I get here? Like most entrepreneurial, like totally by accident. Did not plan to be here. So I kind of mentioned a pivot that we took with my previous business because we had to during COVID. And as a result, we were selling to all sorts of different companies. So kind of as a forcing function for our team, just to organize, we started doing a really standardized intake call process with the folks that we were talking to in HR. And as an outsider looking in, laying that, oh, did I pause? Am I frozen? Okay, back.
You're back.
So when you lay a standard template kind of over a lot of different unique entities, which is what we were dealing with, right? Companies with all sorts of different headcounts, geographies, industries, start to recognize patterns. And that's exactly what happened to our team. So being unfamiliar with the function itself, we were really curious why the function all seemed to be operating the same way, despite sort of the differences and nuances in the companies themselves. And we really got curious about why that was happening. And it wasn't that there wasn't a lack of awareness on the part of the user or the buyer, the HR person, leader sitting in the seat, that it wasn't the best way to be operating. It was more so that there really wasn't a way to get out of it, right? A lot of the folks we were talking with were kind of flying blind. They didn't have visibility into their operations, and so didn't really know how best to think about how our service plugged into their larger project or strategy. And as a vendor selling in, that's really detrimental to you as well, because your service and what you're offering isn't being optimized when that's the case. So we were kind of like, selfishly, how could we start to make that better so that people can optimize what we're providing them and make that better for them, better in their environments. And that just led down a whole rabbit hole of how do you talk about buy-in? How do you talk about alignment with the executive team? How do you talk about budget and metrics and success metrics and things like that? So that's kind of led us to this larger project. But personally, I will say I always get a bit skeptical when when individuals are sort of blamed for systematic sort of like structural problems, right? So if we remember, all of us, COVID, right? That was a wild time for employer-employee relations. And it seemed like there was something really foundationally, structurally amiss with the HR function itself, not with the individuals that were operating in that environment. And if we could solve that foundational structure, the folks that were in the positions of leadership would be elevated and empowered to do things differently. And then the function is largely sort of 80%, upwards of 80% maybe women and other minorities. So these are my people I identify, and I don't like when people are blamed for things that are structurally not working in their favor. Right?
I hear you. I totally hear you. Mercedes, I feel like you have so much to share in that regard, having come from like a storefront perspective. Thoughts on this?
That my people think I'm relating so much about the structure versus the individual, how we're making these structural changes, and then we're like, go pull yourself by the bootstraps. I'm like, I don't even have boots. Like, what's going on? Where are they? And it's all the things. Yes, I totally agree. And I also didn't come from HR. So when I came to HR, it was very confusing. I'm like, why don't we just, they're like, no. I'm like, okay. But then I understood why, because as you say, it's a systematic thing. But yeah, I'm sure we'll have. I am so excited to learn from your perspective, because one of the things we always complain about is all these non-HR people come in, these vendors, they're like, oh, these HR people are idiots. We'll just give them some tech. I'm like, go right ahead. Good luck with that first audit or that first conversation with your leader, or just understanding how people, right? Humaning is hard, and dealing with humans is harder.
It's
So
mushy.
I
Yes.
cannot wait to learn from your perspective, because I love how you've approached it and how you observe. And we have so much to learn from curious people that gently come in to observe instead of just judge. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Mercedes. So, Barb, this one's for you. I think Malika and Mercedes both alluded to a little bit in terms of how the world, it's a little bit messy. Like as an HR leader, you're sitting in the seat where it's a rock and a hard place and maybe a few other things in between. So, in your perspective, what are solutions getting right and wrong in the market right now? Like, how do you feel about the way technology implementation solutions are being presented to HR leaders across the board?
I think, as I was listening to others talk, I definitely would echo the curiosity or the lack of curiosity piece. And I think that was actually what kept me in the conversation with Malika, to be honest, because it does feel more rare. And it's not to say that every HR tech founder lacks curiosity at all, but we do have we have a distinct lack of people coming out of the HR profession and going and building technology. We have like outsiders coming in, and there's a vibe right with it that is like because like a little bit savior like in a sense, like because y'all couldn't figure this out, right? We've come up with a better way, which has just not been my experience, right? Like there are good and bad HR professionals in the world for sure. Like I'm not saying we're perfect by any means, but that lack of curiosity and understanding why the thing is broken in places and what it is that's happening that's causing it. So that's sort of one piece. If I could take it in a different direction, I think especially with AI, but this was happening before as well, in my opinion, is the proliferation of point solutions. So it got real. So, and I am actually a big fan of point solutions, right? Like asking an HR team to use a single tool for everything is like, in my opinion, asking the sales team, the finance team, and everybody else to like do all of their jobs, because HR is decidedly cross-functional, right? If you compare like comp to recruiting, the jobs are different, right? So I'm a fan of point solutions, but it got like so micro and continues to get so micro. Like, am I really going to put 242 tools in place in my tech stack in order to get a job done? The answer is I am not going to do that. So, and then the last thing would be on approach, maybe is like they're not, the HR tech vendors aren't even getting to me because their sales teams are just spamming on LinkedIn in a way that is not helpful. And so I just feel like a more old school, if you will, relationship focused approach seems to be what works better for me, because it's like a lot, like they're a lot. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever experienced this, but I think just last week I got hi, Linda, we do XYZ. Da, da. I'm like, listen, if you're going to do this, at least have the decency to pull from a database where they spell my name right in the first place.
Well, at least they called you Linda. At least they called you Linda instead of hi, fill in the blank inside parentheses, and just left their tags in there. So that's a step in the right direction.
So
They tried.
lesson for all marketing teams out there. Audit, review your automated marketing email systems. We do notice as it appears. Martha, I'd love to get your take on this one because it's just something that Barb said that kind of made me realize it's also the theme of conversations I have very frequently, especially in the people analytics, HR ops space. It's like you sit on demos sometimes and they're almost like one step short of like, yeah, I don't think HR is that smart. You guys are not going to exist for a very long time vibe. Like, how do you guys feel about that? Do you get those vibes too? Like, am I reading too much into it? What does that feel like? Oh, and Martha, you're on mute.
And then I couldn't find my mouse thing to try to take myself off mute. Welcome to live, Martha. But I would say within the people analytics space, you definitely get a lot of real techie people, right? Because they're dealing with data and analytics and so forth. And, you do have some where they bring that kind of nuance, excuse me, and understanding that like people data is messy for various different reasons. And then you get some that, they're just like, oh, our tool can solve all your data quality issues. So you can do all the things that you want. And it's like, it's not really that simple. And so you definitely have to kind of, suss that out and dig through and try to understand, okay, when you say you're going to, do my data quality audit for me, what does that mean? And how are you going to handle these edge cases, and just have that conversation around like, what is the percent, you're never going to have your data 100% clean. What is the goal in terms of, are we talking about 90% reliable? Are we talking about 70% reliable? And the more you bring in AI and or want to bring in AI, all of that becomes more and more important. But I do get a little bit skeptical when they're like, oh, we're just going to, use AI to fix all your data. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I feel like the AI label has really been overused in certain extents. Now, we can argue AI has been around since the 1950s and all of that fun stuff. So technically, when people say it's AI, it is AI. But I feel like there's also like a sending sort of a 10-year-old Lydia around with a label gun and putting labels on everything around the house sort of vibe going on when it comes to AI, so to speak. Okay, so we're going to do a quick fire round just to pick things up a little bit before I pivot us into the next topic. Around the table, Malika, I'm going to start with you. Barb, will move to you. Martha, then Mercedes. One stubborn HR headache that you would love to automate tomorrow because you think everyone else would just love it. And for those of us who are joining us on the live, product idea time. I'm just putting it out there. So Malika, one thing you would love to automate tomorrow.
Well, I hope I don't take Barb's answer. I mean, I can tell you what we are focusing on, which is scoping projects, right? So that's something that we recognize that if there was a less chaotic HR team, it was because there was somebody that was at the table with really deep, like project management skills they taught themselves, whether that's sort of like spreadsheet manual or Asana or Smartsheet or whatever. It's because there was somebody on your team that could hack that. If you were a really fortunate HR team, maybe you had a dedicated ops person or somebody that was staying on that operational flow, project management flow like a hawk, right? And some of the really super successful teams we've talked to, they have like 3 full-time, project management people on a given enterprise team, for example. So that's the thing that we felt like if we could magically give that level of expertise to an HR team that's really lean and scrappy and probably doesn't have, nor should they have, right, a full-time project manager skill set or resource on their team, that would be pretty awesome. And that's sort of like the magic that we've been focusing on.
Awesome. Mercedes, we're going to litmus test this live. What do you think of that idea? Is it a pain point that you want to solve?
So I was the head of the PMO for my last organization, and I have 4 project managers, and then we move from projects to products, but it's context-based. Not all organizations need that or are big enough. And to me, yes. And the thing that I always will say now forever is the governance, like the air traffic controlling, and not just the scoping and what you should be doing, but the governance and what should be a priority. And it's a whole host of things that are enabled. But that is a big pain point. I think we really underestimate how much you needed that to go this way. Barb, to your point, HR is different function. It's like a business within the business. So it's critical. But the second piece, you're introducing agents and other things. And if you're focusing on the employee experience versus HR for HR, your world gets so much bigger. And if you do not know how to do this, it's going to be a nightmare to manage. So 2 thumbs up for fixing that problem. Good job. And I'm rooting for you so hard.
Oh, there we go. That worked. Barb, one giant pain point that you would love to automate, solve for HR tomorrow.
Well, so since Malika did like channel her inner CHRO and like basically did steal my answer, it kind of is a thing that shakes out of this is I think we are not giving enough attention to change management and communication and training when we do stuff in HR. And obviously we know it's important, but as we get like stuck, like sort of behind the 8 ball of something rolling out, like that doesn't happen. And I think I actually convinced Malika to even think about this with building the product, hopefully. But if we can automate, right, like all of the myriad of communications that you need and sort of training plans and stuff that you would need relative to a specific project. So it's doesn't feel like reinventing the wheel every single time. And also should not feel like just asking ChatGPT 600 questions either. So like something that's way more automated than that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and I will say though, just to extend on that is, if you think about adoption and like change management and getting people to adopt whatever tool, whether it's AI or not, like that communication piece of it is so important. And so I think the more you can automate that, because otherwise when, you know, whoever the project manager is or program manager or what have you, the person that's owning that new technology, if they're busy, guess what goes first? Like, guess what they like take off the list of things that I'm going to get done today, because they want to make sure, like in their mind, the fact that the tool isn't crashing, the fact that people have a good experience when they go into the tool, all these things is what they're prioritizing, right? Because they're thinking like this is important. But like if nobody actually goes into the tool, you know, because they don't have the right communications, then yeah, your 5 people that go into the tool are having a great experience, but all these hundreds of other people that are not getting there. So yeah, I think that communication piece is key.
Yeah, for sure. And folks, if you're listening to us live, I did warn all of our panelists and my co-hosts today that, and well, my co-hosts know this by now, we go on off-roading adventures sometimes. So when it comes to live events with Lydia, it's like on a good day, it's an 80-20 split. We go off-roading 20%. On a bad day, it's about a 50-50 split. Let's see how today ends up. So we're going to go off-roading on the topic of change management and adoption right now. And Mercedes, by the way, Sandra is saying HR is a business within the business, and double echoing that. Go ahead.
And I want to chime in because you stole the pain point, and I'm actually dealing with it. So I moved from the white collar to blue collar, and I was responsible for the project, the portfolio, the change, and everything. But man, if now that it's a world of continuous change, and if you're productizing things, there's more individual features. How do you immediately communicate those changes to everyone? Because it's the service, the call center, the new onboarding team, the field. For now, I'm dealing also with people that don't have computers. They're maintenance technicians. So how do you do it in a distributed workforce? If we can do that, and then for whoever's listening, Lord, the pinpoint of when people leave and come back, and you have to provision for system access and put them in distribution lists. Gee, this listers, please, somebody. Come tell me that I'm an idiot and I couldn't fix it. Cool, I'll take it. I'll buy your thing.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, because having worked in manufacturing before, I don't know what it is. 2 points to that. Number one, I have been told it is easier to quit and come back than it is to transfer functions in an organization because of the way the tech is set up. 2, I have been told, or I've personally experienced, most technology in the market weirdly today is designed for some reason and implemented with the knowledge workforce in mind, assuming that all of us are in front of a laptop and can engage actively. We're not accounting for the people who are out in the fields 24/7, who on a good day might be able to check their cell phone once or twice. On a bad day, they're not even getting on a laptop kiosk. So good luck getting to them without putting pay stubs in the mail, because some of us still have to work that way. But I do want to detour a little bit, because change management and adoption is one of those soapboxes that I will stand on and scream from the rooftop with, if you will, because I genuinely do believe it is one of those areas that is lacking when it comes to technology implementation and everything else. Sometimes it's nice to see a line on the project plan that says execute change management. But when it comes to, it becomes like, okay, let me just write these really quick 3 emails 3 weeks before go live. And I wish people best of luck and they're on their way. And then we'll see how the troubleshooting and adoption rate goes. How do you feel about that in the world of technology when we're talking about ROI? 2 questions. Number one, in your opinion, how important is change management? And number 2, can it truly make or break technology on implementation with adoption rates? Whoever wants to go, we're off-roading here.
I mean, yes, and yes. It's that important. It absolutely can break it if the humans don't use the technology. Yes, then that's a problem, clearly, right? And I think in any of the founders that I'm working with, or if I'm buying a product, right, I will ask a ton of questions around how much handholding the vendor does for onboarding, right? I think when I'm advising a founder, it's like the single best way to prevent churn is to have amazing onboarding, which effectively is just change management. It's just what you call it when you're a vendor and you're bringing people on your tool, right? When you're working internal, I think we could solve so much of our own problem and our lack of attention to that area, because it just does get like shoved down sometimes to be like the last thing. And you're lucky if you get it like 3 weeks ahead of time that somebody's like crafting emails, because that has not always been my norm. But if you can like get your vendors to help you with that, and I look to vendors and I say, please tell me that you are going to silver platter me the entire onboarding like process that you would like to follow, along with communications. And when a vendor can actually do that, demonstrate that they have done it with others and can do that for me, and it foolproofs things for my team, that's very interesting to me.
So I have two things to say to that. So one is, so I agree with what you're saying. I think where it gets difficult for vendors, though, is that depending on the organization, like the size and what they do and all of these different things, the onboarding plan, like I've been part of an implementation where they're like, here are these communications that you can use. And I'm like, thank you, but I'm going to do my own, because those actually don't work with like our culture, like the tone, because each vendor has like their own tone, right? And the language that they use and so forth. And like, no, like I worked for some very like, stuffy, for lack of a better word, I can't think of a better word, but like very like, oh, we have to be very, professional in our language. So this like, hey, cool hippie language doesn't work. And so I'm having to change that. Right. And so, maybe there's a space for AI to help with that. Right. Like, here's an onboarding communication plan for you. Now catered to your language, to your culture, and so forth, because it's nice if I can plug and play, but if not, and I have to redo it all, then I'm back to square one. The other thing I want to say, though, is I agree that change management is super important, but the element that I think of change management that maybe that comes way, way, way before you start even thinking about how to like talk to people, is actually in the design of things. I'm a big fan of like human-centered design. So the more that you can design the product, the tool, the process, whatever it may be, that you're bringing it to them and the stuff that they're already doing, and they're not having to change their behavior to adopt it, then that's going to be, I think, where you get the best change management success or the best adoption. But anytime I'm having to like come out of my, if I'm in my HRIS 80% of the day because that's my role, but now I'm having to go out and go into this other system, like you're already creating barriers to adoption there, right? So the more you can design it to be easy for them to do it without having to think, without having to go other places, the better, which is not always feasible, because now you're having to like plug into other tools, and those tools don't always want to play nice, but that would be kind of the goal.
I need to hop in and correct something, because this will give the audience an idea of how starved some of us feel in the HR space, because clearly what I mean as a silver platter is exactly what Martha just described. My silver platter comes with like the baseline communications that 100% of the time we've had to rewrite, but that still felt like a gift in a way, right? To have to start with something where we just had to do tone and language and make sure it fit our culture and all of those pieces. So yes, my silver platter is maybe just like I don't know, platter that's plastic. You can like take it to the patio, drop on the floor, it won't break. I'm good. Yeah, that's all.
It's like it's a lunch bag.
It is. It's a brown lunch bag. Yeah, exactly. It's not a silver platter. It's soggy at the bottom too. Yeah. We've got that.
I have 3 quick things, having done implementation and all of these changes for over a decade. And Kyle, I see for those of you who cannot see, he's talking about personalized data. But it goes back to what you were saying, Malika, on the structure of things, because to me, 3 things. One, product fit, right? And my co-hosts here have heard me say millions of times, I laugh when people want me to do change management while they're selling hot dogs to vegans. Like, no. You have a product fit problem. 2, this is why I moved our organization, the last one, from projects to products, because I wanted to move to, if continuously changing is the norm, then how do we do it so that we have a structure and a system in which, okay, every quarter we're going to be like, here's the smaller chunks of things that are going to change. And like your phone, you get a thing that says, hey, persona, these are the 5 things that impact you, so on and so forth. And then thirdly, yes, is that personalization and plus one to everything you just covered. I remember doing that, but then I had 64 applications, working with the different vendors to, oh no, we have our process in our thing. I'm like, that's fabulous, but it's not going to fly here. And but we'll adapt it. But it's a mindset shift, and it again will depend on your context. So that's my point three. What worked for my older organization will not work at all here. And sometimes we try to do these giant things that are not necessary or not think about enough, not just on how we're thinking about adoption, but are people ready to consume based on the 50,000 other things that are coming their way? Where Malika and Barb, back to your someone centralized on the project management and the air traffic control, people's ability to deliver, but also people's ability to consume. All of the things. It's very, very, very important. Why collect dust? Have things that nobody uses and now you have to maintain.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. And pay for. I'm gonna, Lydia, if it's okay, I'll jump in. I'm gonna take us back to an off-road route we went to a little bit ago. I'll bring us back here. I do just want to chime in on behalf of some vendors and founders that I know that there are some great folks that are solving the problem of reaching comms, training and development, different workforce types. So I don't know if you sanction mentioning other tech here, Lydia, but I'm happy to
go
name
for it.
that.
This is completely unsponsored. Like, I am here to offer tips
cool.
and connect like smart technology.
These are just founder friends of mine doing great things, right? So these are workforces that might be seasonal, they might be in the field, they might be manufacturing, and like just different needing the comms and the training in different formats and different platforms and channels, right? So Escalate is a great company doing work in that field. Fountain, friends of ours, doing great work in that space, and TeamSense, a Seattle-based company, also doing really cool stuff in that space. So just a little plug for some other founder friends doing some cool work and reach and dispersing that comms and L&D to different workforce types.
TeamSense is the one that does blue-collar workforce, right?
Yes.
Female founder and everything?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And full disclosure, Sheila is a good friend of mine from college. Sheila, if there's any way that you're watching this, we were neither one of us was at all thinking about this freshman year when we ended up randomly put in two rooms down the hall from each other. But yeah, she's doing really cool work in that space. Because she came from manufacturing background. She actually worked at Whirlpool out of her grad degree, so understood what it was like to be in a different workforce and manufacturing environment, right? So was thinking about that when COVID hit, and she was working for another company and trying to disperse critical health and safety information to that workforce type. How does that happen? And that's how TeamSense evolved. Yeah. These are all, I don't know about Fountain. I don't think Fountain, but these are all women. The other two are women led founding teams.
Complete side note to all this. So Sheila and I connected maybe 2.5 years ago.
Oh, Sheila, this is
story. I know we're totally having a live conversation about Sheila that is complete unsanctioned by Sheila. I love this. So her story 2.5 years ago is actually what inspired my redirection a little bit with Think That Out Loud, to connect really smart technology with what I call the traumatized HR buyers. Because I realized, in knowing more about her, the work that she does, there are some genuine founders out there with really smart technology who will bend over backwards and go above and beyond any stretch of the imagination to make sure their customers are successful. But because their time is so consumed by the product development and everything else in that front, the marketing dollars aren't there. And when the marketing dollars aren't there, the proliferation of that technology doesn't make it out to the market quite as much. Yeah. So shout out to Sheila, shout out to TeamSense, completely unplanned for. All right.
That's amazing. We are not sponsored by TeamSense.
We are not. We do have a question from Kyle. All right, so live question. How many orgs know what will work when considering solutions to the problem in front of them? So in other words, Kyle, if I'm interpreting your question correctly, how many orgs actually read into the tea leaves to say, this looks like a really smart piece of technology. I think it could work. Barbara, Mercedes, I'm going to start with you guys. Go.
Literally, I think that is one of the, and I can't believe I didn't think to mention this in my, like, what's happening with vendors that's like wrong right now is the way that HR teams are consuming things is I actually think absent a view of all of the work that is happening in our teams, and I don't just mean the project work, right? I mean project work, cyclical work, routine work, ad hoc, emergent sort of stuff. If you don't have all of that view, how can you possibly have a good understanding of which problems warrant your first attention from a solutions perspective, right? And so I just think it is objectively true that there is no system that shows us that whole view today. And so the answer is we don't know, right? And so I think that's actually the thing that's causing, like I'm hearing for on the vendor side, that we HR buyers are not buying. I think that's why, right? And I don't know if others want to riff on that idea, but I think it's important.
I hear about FOMO and FOBO, like fear of missing out, fear of becoming obsolete. For me, and fuck, like FOC, fear of commitment, because things are. I used to have this problem, but now I'm like, I don't know, because it's moving so fast, and every day the new vendor that I have is doing some new thing, and I just think, oh my god, the governance of these things talking to each other as it is, I don't want to do anything. And I actually had a conversation, Lydia, with someone that's doing governance that you refer me to. And one of the things that struck me is that she said a lot of her friends are like, okay, I'm afraid that these jobs are going away, but I don't even know what to upskill myself in because I don't know where things are going. So that's one. The second piece is if you're in your organization and you're still working in silos, you're looking at what's going to work for talent acquisition, for talent management, because we're not looking at the employee problem that we're trying to solve. And that requires a whole new mind shift of how we view work. You start with the design of the employee. You start with what's most important that is going to move the dial. And then from there, use the technology as an enablement. But many people still confuse the digital mindset, the whole thing, with the technology. This technology is the product that's going to fix it. No, the technology is just an enabler of the wider piece that's going to help you. And it has to be specific to your context. Almost none of the technology I had where I came from would work here. So it's just a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah,
I just want to add, I think that you're bringing up something I want to bring up from your previous comment to Mercedes. I think Barb answered that sort of from the perspective of a practitioner, right? And the org, which is how the question was asked by Paul. But I do think I think we're talking about the vendor responsibility on this front too, right? And as a vendor, there's two like parts of the journey where this is so critical, right? It's in sales and it's in renewals. And Mercedes, you were sort of talking about the vendor responsibility to understand the fit, right? If you also as a vendor don't understand what structure you're plugging into, how is your tool and your value actually going to be utilized and optimized and dispersed within that structure, you're at a loss, and you're already operating at a loss from a vendor perspective because you don't have control over that user journey, right? And the place where that really comes back to bite you is at renewal. So if you've sort of, without that knowledge, gotten the sale or somehow eked through on the sale, right? But you're not providing value, you're going to have all of that come crashing down at the point of renewal. And that's just a disaster it's more of a disaster for a vendor than having not sold the tech in the first place. So there's a lot of org responsibility, but really it's like a symbiotic relationship, right? Because if the vendor doesn't have that visibility either, vendors aren't successful either.
Completely agree. And to follow on Kyle's question to here, one of the things I do when I'm buying a technology or solution is that I always call people for which it worked really well or it didn't work well. I was asked, and that are similar to me. And this is why servicing is so important with the vendor, because you buy it, but when the thing goes wrong, can I call you? Because people are going to blame you, like your technology, even if it has nothing to do with it. So help solution. So yeah, we're ready with what is the outcome that this is going to fix? Can you help me understand practical things? I know it's not going to be perfect. So can I talk to people that have done it? And can I learn? We did retrospectives every quarter to be like what worked and what we didn't work so that we can incorporate that. And it's just a lot of lessons learned in your context to know what will work for change or not. And just everything we do is a hypothesis. We don't know. That's the reality. And then put it in and have good data and cut your losses fast and sunset if it doesn't work. It's tough out there.
I think I just called. Sorry, can I just, because all these people just called us out on this. I think I just called Paul or Kyle Paul. So
it's Kyle Paul. It's kind of
Kyle, I see you. I see you. I'm not that HR vendor. I promise. Okay.
So you're not going to call Lydia Linda down the road.
Yeah. I would say that, I've worked for, and I've had conversations with founders, HR tech founders that like they've had that tough, like, I remember one specific conversation where she was like, you know what, this customer, like this would be an amazing contract from a revenue perspective. When I'm talking about investors, my investors are going to be super happy. It's really, really hard for me, but I have to walk away because I know that, as much as they're sold on us, I know that they're not ready, or I know that, XYZ reason, it's not going to work. And so why waste my time? It's not only you're going to lose the renewal later, but this is probably what you were keen into, Malika, when you were saying it's better than not signing them, because then how much effort, when you're talking about you have, limited time in the day, how much effort are you going to spend working with that customer, trying to get them to be successful, as opposed to maybe two other customers that those two customers take the same amount of effort because it just makes much more sense for them. And so my challenge to, the vendors out there is, yes, it's hard to say no to money, but your time is going to be sucked by a customer that is not ready for your solution or is not a fit for your solution.
Oh, for sure. I think that fit there is the crux to a lot of the challenges we're seeing across the board right now. I'm going to drill a little bit deeper on Kyle's question and then kind of bring us back to the run sheet. We're back to regular plan route again. So I think one of the things I'm really curious about is when you look at a solution or when you implement a solution, like in your gut, you always know, is this going to work for my organization? What is that initial signal or that initial reading into the tea leaves that makes you kind of go like, okay, this is promising. This could be something that I can use. Barb, Mercedes, Martha, whoever wants to take
it. Usage, right? And feedback. I think for me, it's as simple as that. Like, are people and I offer feedback alongside of usage, because people getting into the tool is not enough. Feedback to me implies as a signal that people are engaged enough and invested enough to care on telling you how to make it better. And that's why I think vendors, right, who are to employ like sort of user-centered design approaches, right, like are taking the feedback from engaged customers and running with it. So that's what I'd offer.
And I'm going to double click on that because usage can be tricky, because I've worked for organizations before where for political reasons or what else, like there's pressure to use something, right? And so I've found myself with my boss telling me it's okay. This is not just me doing it. My boss saying like, Martha, just log in once a week so that we can get them off of our backs. And so, but I wasn't actually still using the solution that they wanted me to use, right? It was just, but the person that was driving this was in a position of power. And so, my boss didn't want that person like coming and knocking and saying, why isn't your team using it? Why isn't your team using it? Right. And so there's incentives, right? There could also be incentives, what percentage of your team is using this new program or system or what have you. And all of that can muddy data and usage data and so forth. So that feedback or anything else that you can get to speak to the more qualitative side, I think is important. So
I will add that I think everything's context specific, because it's something that I may find really valuable, but now it's my 80th priority. I'm not going to use it. So the second piece is, did people ask for it? Like, is an actual problem? I am so amazed by how many things the HR might always say, I got into HR because we don't understand the work, and now we're getting there and I love it. And we have different love languages. I always feel HR is like words of affirmation, and the business and the side is like acts of service. So if the thing is not solving something that's a problem in my workflow, I'm not going to use it. HR, you're an impediment, go away. And so it's very, very important, Barb, exactly what you said. People are using it and why. But beyond usage, is it actually helping us? the number one thing clicked on my intranet thingy was employee discounts. I'm like, you mean that we spend like millions on all of these things and no one cares? So, but is that actually elevating my productivity or my what have you? I don't know, right? So, is it an actual problem? The people want it. Is in the workflow, and is it solving the problem of usage, or is it actually doing the outcome that we bought this for? And that's tricky to measure sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's a conversation to your point of Mercedes, outcome versus outputs. Outputs, how many clicks? Can we gather those clicks? Outcomes, did I actually get my money's worth? Did I actually get my engagement's worth? What is that? And I think that, and this is the analytics part of Lydia talking, that actually requires a very intentional set of time series measures that I don't know if we're rolling out in all of our implementation plans. And we're like, yay, change management, 3 emails, go live. Okay, we're done. On to the next one. Without the intentionality of saying, how are we really going to measure success and how are we going to sequentially measure those success metrics? So we are about 15 minutes to the top of the hour here. I want to be conscious of time. So I'm going to pivot us into sort of the practical part of the HR Tech Couch Club, where we try to be a little more practical and not just theorize left, right, and center. So Malika, this question is going to be a little different for you than it is for Barb, Martha, and Mercedes. But from your angle, I would love to know that before you get on a demo with someone, when someone requests a demo from you, what kind of internal dialogue do you have to say, like, okay, am I going to be of value, or is this going to be like a casual meet and greet situation? What are some of those telltale signs that you look for?
That's interesting. I will say that I do think a lot of this is relationship based, and so if you're fortunate enough to get an answer, to get a yes to a demo, which we've all heard is rarely happening these days in the industry. So if you're fortunate enough to have someone on the other end of a demo call, I do think there is. I think you wrote something about this today, Lydia, right? The human fear piece
Yes.
of of the tech, right? So as vendors, I think it's really important to understand that people might be coming at this with all sorts of different perceptions, misperceptions, understandings of the technology in the market today and where they sit in that conversation, right? If you're mentioning, Lydia, an ethos out there, which is that we're just going to AI everything and HR isn't even going to exist anymore. If that's like a thread that's floating out there, then the people that you're coming into contact with to do demo calls might be in all sorts of headspaces, right, regarding that. So I do think that there is a lot of value in building a foundational relationship with the person, understanding what they're dealing with day to day in general, right? Just understanding who they are, what they care about, maybe where they're at in their point of their career, right? Who they think are their biggest champions at the org and the work and in their work, and those types of conversations inform any value that you're going to bring from a tech perspective as a vendor selling in. So I just think these are long relationships, right? And so starting from that perspective and trying to really understand where someone's coming from probably is something that serves both parties better in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. So relationships, not transaction. Martha, Mercedes, Barb, questions be a little bit shifted for you guys. So you get a lot of code outreaches. The misspelling of your name or the open parentheses of insert name here aside, which we have all at least seen once at one point in our lives. What are some quick litmus tests that you kind of go through that says like, yes, this is a demo that I want to get into. This is going to solve my problem versus no, goodbye, trash, never talk to me again, junk mail folder. Whoever wants to go first.
Do tell.
So for me, I think it's interesting when I can tell that they're looking at my company name and they are not paying attention to what I do. So I get people all the time reaching out to me. I mean, I'm people analytics, right? And they reach out to me for things that have nothing to do. Can I show you this demo about, development or whatever it is? And I'm like, I'm not the person for you to be talking to about this. So either you are just like reaching out to anybody with a people HR title at this company, or you did not read my profile, or either way, it's a waste of my time and yours. So
go ahead, Barb.
Yeah. So I can't remember the last time that I responded to cold outreach or sometimes even saw the cold outreach in my inbox or my LinkedIn inbox. Because it's so one directional, right? And it's like if I'm trying to decipher between this is something that can solve my problem, or this is like a shiny object, right? Anything that's like one directional that has no understanding of me, my situation, or anything, like Martha says, other than my logo, and like you're chasing my logo for your website or something, is not speaking to my problem. So what I most of the demos that I take are because of some personal introduction, networked connection, that kind of thing, because someone who I know who understands my problem, like a peer in the industry who I've been talking to, bumps into a vendor who's like, you need to talk to Barb. And when that introduction comes in that way, I feel like it was put in front of me because it solves my problem. And so I can more confidently say yes. And that's the only thing I've been saying yes to. And I tell vendors this openly. By the way, I participate in People Tech Partners. So we see a lot of HR tech vendors and they're like, what works for outreach? I'm like, don't do it. Like, try something different. Like, really try something different, please. And it will work, right? And other people really echoed that sentiment when I've shared that feedback with vendors previously.
So I'm going to be tracking how Zoom Info and HubSpot is doing after this episode gets published, just from a market performance perspective, with the, hey, cold outreach might not work for you too well.
I think it's because it's completely overwhelming. I hate ghosting. I always try to reply, but I can't. Like, I get, Martha, the amount of times that people trying to sell me like the randomest things. I'm like, how would I get, no. And I try sometimes to like help them, but oh God, I don't have time. So either two ways, either one, I'm pretty familiar with what I need. So I take it if it's something that sounds like they understand the problem or it's interesting. When I was PMO at the other place, it'd be, oh, this might be something that's a gap that we should be considering for I think is going to be the future, so target it. But otherwise, I'm telling you the last one, oh, people, it's so easy to know what my heartstrings to pull from me. Like, I post all my personal stuff on like LinkedIn about my emotional journeys and all these things. And actually, one of the co-founders of CLAR, like performance management, shout out to you, because you're the one person that's actually like my friend now, because we started talking about philosophy and all these things. Next thing you know, I'm like, how do I help you sell your stuff? Like, it's crazy. And the last thing I will say, I buy from people, or I look at things from people that I trust. If Lydia tells me I like anything, or Martha says I like this, it's probably the word. I don't care. I'm going to trust that like 100% over anybody else. And so people really underestimate the power of that kind of relationship. So get to know the person first, spell my name right, get generally the idea of what I do, and just know that we're not ignoring you completely. It's impossible. It's impossible, and it's crowded.
And I think it's also emotionally taxing on us, because I remember when I first started my journey as an HR tech portfolio buyer, you do want to help everyone because you do think there's hope and future in the industry. Like, heck, you don't get into HR unless you believe in the future of HR. It's a very taxing business to be in. But simultaneously, it's also incredibly draining because you come across the bad actors who are just trying to get as much out of you as possible. The moment they realize there is no transaction, goodbye, you'll never hear from them again until the next transaction potential comes up. But I think it's really, to your point, all of your points, which comes down to a theme of relationship. It's not just vendors building a relationship with their customers, which could feel really fake, but I think it's also customers coming in with the intention of like, hey, you might not get a sale, but I could get a friend out of this. And this could be a very much a long, ongoing kind of conversation. So it's almost like a mentality shift from transaction into relations.
Well, and can I just, because the friend thing, I was going to comment on, like, clearly all of us have made friends then with vendors that we've worked with. And it truly is because I don't dislike vendors, right? I feel very much like you've described, Lydia. I want to be helpful. And when someone engages in a way that like draws me into like relationship with them, even if their solution is not for me, like here I am like helping them find their next customer because of how so it's like I just can't emphasize enough to like tech founders how valuable that relationship driven approach is, because you make a friend and they will help you even if they're not your right customer. So it's just like thinking the long game a little bit more than like the activity metrics of just like pumping out like sort of sales activity that produces no results. And yes, so we actually are friends to vendors here, even though I said some things that maybe I do have vendor friends, I promise.
Well, it's really funny that you mentioned that. So Alex Paz, shout out to him. Funny enough, he's at Zoom Info now, but shout out to him. So him and I have known each other for a good part of like 5-6 years, because he was part of a vendor team that was trying to sell to me when I was at my previous employer. And we've been friends forever and ever. I've literally never bought anything from that man. But there's been a lot of great referrals. There's been a lot of great conversations. So point being, relationship can continue without the transaction dollars. The dollars will come later. I think the relationship comes first. It's pretty much the consensus across the board here.
So now, Lydia, we just got to get a VC in this mix on the next conversation, so that when vendors put like friendships as the go-to-market channel,
Yeah.
they're gonna be, how long is that going to take?
I'm telling you though, I've sold solutions for other people, and they wanted to give me commissions. I'm like, no, I want all of us to win. It's a village, but like, build human first, people. Don't treat me like I'm an idiot, and then your technology is gonna fix what I couldn't figure out, and then don't even see that I care about like woo-woo stuff.
Yeah, for
Easy,
sure.
like.
Yeah. Okay, last 4 minutes, 1 minute each, quick round. So we talked about Lydia with the AI label gun running around like a 10-year-old labeling everything in the house is exactly what the marketing scheme sometimes feels like in HR tech. What is the one follow-up question that you have either received or you would love to get that will tell you if this is a true AI and truly intentionally designed intelligent solution versus rebranded automation? I talked a little bit about mine earlier, which is my favorite question, like what the heck made you want to get into the HR tech game? Because to me, the drive, the inspiration of someone wanting to enter this industry kind of goes into the product design itself to begin with. But would love to know from all of your perspective, what is that one really smart question you've gotten, or the one question that you would love to ask that kind of gets that sense out?
Mine might only be a variation on yours, Lydia, but it's help me understand the logic that you are using to help train your agent or build the AI. Because if the folks that are building the thing don't understand sort of the multifaceted problem enough to truly get the AI working as you would need to, all they're probably doing is automating some existing thing to make it faster or something like that. So it's like the human needs to be able to be intelligent enough to describe the problem wholly, or I'm not going to trust that their AI solution is built out to do that if they can't even describe it.
Yeah, for sure.
I would ask if they're the company. What's the company that just went under because there was like a bunch of people in India doing coding and it wasn't.
Oh, yes, I forgot. But yes, I know the article that you're talking about, and I'll drop it in the comments.
Great. We have espionage, we have things. For me, the minute I start asking what are the problems you're trying to solve for, but the minute I start asking about governance, risk, and all of these pieces, or like the actual architecture in the back, yeah, it falls apart real quick.
All right, Malika.
Lydia, I think your question is so spot on, Lydia, because even there's fellow founders of mine, right, in the HR tech space, and I'm like, why this problem? Like, this wasn't even you never even had this problem, or why did you choose this, right? So that I think gets into this like really critical, like those point solutions that Barb is talking about. They're so micro focused. Like, why did you choose this? It could be a really interesting data problem to solve. But is it, or an AI challenge, right, to solve, but is it an interesting like user problem to solve? But I think just to add something new to the conversation, maybe a follow-up could be sort of like where to next, right? how is the vendor thinking about how they're building the foundation and how they're layering in product development to expand out or expand down, like that breadth or depth issue. And I think just talking to founders and emerging vendors about sort of like where they intend to go next with this build.
For sure.
Yeah. Mine is, I just want to understand also from an ethics and transparency perspective when it comes to AI, how does it work? How is it making recommendations or decisions or whatever it may be? And sometimes because they know I'm technical, they'll bring me the technical person to we really geek out on the questions. But even the salesperson or whoever it is that you're talking to should have some basic level of understanding, I think. So if you don't like talk to your product team to understand, and you know, you're not going to be able to dive 100 feet deep, but be able to at least on a high level speak to like how is it working, what kind of data is being used, and so forth. Because if they can't answer those questions, it makes me very questionable as to whether or not they've really put that much thought into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. That brings us right to the top of the hour. So Malika, Barb, thank you both so much for hanging out with us on the couch. It's been an absolute pleasure. This hour passed by faster than I thought. And remember when I told you we'll be lucky to get through 5 questions on the run sheet? Yeah, I think we got through like maybe 6 at best. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And folks, if you want to connect with both of them, they're both on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out with any follow-up questions. And we will see you next month on the HR Tech Couch Club. Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate it.